I call the meeting to order. First on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from August 11th. The three sent out. Any comments or a motion to approve the minutes?
A motion to approve the minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Well, continues to be a year that keeps on giving. We got through Isaias. Thanks to Gary and Peter for doing road ranger duty. And then we didn't even make it 2 weeks, and then we had that little nor'easter that came in on the 16th, which caused more damage, more tree debris and trees down and so forth. So again, Gary and Peter were out roaming the roads, and the fire department helped us out on a few occasions. We got Carl to clean up some stuff. Gary may have more to say about that. But anyway, we made it through the worst of it. It looked like the lake may have gotten plugged in again, but fortunately, once we went through a couple tide cycles, it opened up and it's been draining. It's been draining good since then. So keep an eye on that. And appreciate you guys that live over here and walk the causeway and everything. Let us know if you see anything amiss down there. One good thing is, we put that trash can down there and it's actually not getting filled up. So people are not littering as much down there as they were. So that's helpful. We're going to put another one down at River Terrace and see if that helps. Seat of honor.
What's that?
The seat of honor.
Oh. I didn't even have copies. Here.
Oh. And then the other vote of thanks. Thanks again very much to Jack and Cindy for putting up with us and enabling us to have our meetings without having to be masked and everything. It'd be nice if we could foresee when we can get over that, but I don't know. Not seeing anything different out of the governor. He's still holding it pretty tight, which I think is probably a good thing. The numbers in Maryland are continuing to stay reasonable. We're seeing them increase in other places, even like Virginia. So don't let it be over. We have to use your hospitality again.
Our pleasure.
Okay. I guess that's all I really need to talk about. I'm going to have more to say when I get to the planning committee and talk about the beach. But that's about all I have for now. Rhea?
Okay. It's time for the audit. They're running a little bit later than usual, probably because of COVID. They've been working from home, but the engagement letter has been sent to Alta. Alta is our accountant, just for anybody that may not know. Usually Mark visits. Mark Perry is the man who does our audit, and he will if necessary, but we're going to start out with my just uploading documents to what we call a smart vault, and then you can access them online. So we'll see how that works. We have a new hire, which I think Gary will probably talk about. Robert Boyowski is our new person trimming the rights of way and doing the jobs that Joe isn't able to do just yet. We'll see when Joe returns, maybe both will continue to work. There's a lot of work out there. Just with regard to the Fragmite and Lake Terrace, I mailed a letter to the owner of the house. I dropped one on the front porch, side porch. There's actually a lockbox on it right now, so I don't know if the owner is trying to sell or if he's just, setting it out there for rent. And then I mailed one to resident at that address.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know what else to do.
We'll see what happens this year, yeah.
Yeah. I had a report, a couple of people reported across from the boat ramp on Riverview, on Leeson Cove actually. A boat is in the water, sunken in the water, swamped. So I called DNR, and others had already reported it. And the woman I spoke with said, Yeah, they'll look at it, but for some reason, you know, things are behind. And she said because of the COVID, I suppose it could have an impact on something like that. So that's where we are with that. And that's it.
Is it blocking the boat ramp or is it
No,
just?
no, it's across the water.
Ah, okay.
It's actually on a dock off of Leeson Cove. But the person that spotted it had been at the boat ramp that day, so.
It's opposite. They traditionally have been abysmal about clearing out these sunken wrecks, whether it's DNR responsibility or Coast Guard. They all look like this. And there was one on the main stem on Mill Creek, not far from Calvert Marina. There was one sunken there for months.
Coles Cove.
There's a sailboat over here somewhere back on Mill or St. John. It's been there for months.
Oh, so there's one that's been there for years.
Yeah, years even. So it's,
Does anybody know who owns it? These?
I also called the people who own that house
Oh.
and left messages and so on.
It's at a private dock. It's not like it's out in open water, it's at a private dock.
yeah, it's
Right,
under dock.
right.
And
Hmm.
it's not a navigational hazard, it's more of a
Environmental.
environmental hazard. I mean,
Everybody knows the story of Rick Butler on Anchor. I'll say his name because he's since deceased. They took the citizens around that property to form a group, concerned citizens about the conditions at Coles Cove. Years and years for that place to be cleaned up. And one of which, there were 2 boats actually at the dock, so. So I don't expect anything too soon.
At what point does the owner is not held responsible?
I don't know.
Unless the owners get out of it.
Right.
Follow on the office. I had raised a question to Rio about, we were starting, and I blame this all on Tony Wood. He set it up so that I started getting all kinds of complaints and emails and letters and stuff.
It's tough to follow up with that.
But I raised a question about, I guess, the board members' privacy. I think traditionally we have posted our emails, right? And phone numbers?
Email and phone number.
Okay.
Not always. I mean, through the years, sometimes we've done it, other times perhaps people objected and they didn't do it.
Okay. Well, at first I objected to everything, and I was going to say, everything ought to go through the office, phone or email. Well, I thought more about that, but we are representing the community, and I guess I don't mind if my email's on there. Those are easy to filter. I do object to my phone number being on there. I don't want people calling me in all hours of the night. They can call the office and leave a message. They can email the office or whatever. Right? And then you can filter stuff and you can send stuff out, forward stuff to
Right.
who you think needs to go to or to the whole board or whatever. But that's where I guess that's where I'm at right now. I think it'd be easier if you just let Maria know what your preferences are. Send her an email. If you want your phone and email withheld, if you want one or the other, just so you know. I mean, some of the stuff exists in past documents and everything anyway, but
But rather than have it piecemeal, why don't we just remove all that information? I'll be honest, I did not have any problems for 3 years except for the last 3 months. And based on the last 3 months, Mike, I totally agree with you. I'm not sure that it makes any sense to have people going directly to board members rather than going through the office.
And I had one a couple of weeks ago,
Well, there you go.
before the last meeting, yeah.
And so if for no other reason than to keep track of complaints and comments and things like that. And so I think it makes sense to remove all of that information
And it is removed now.
and have people
Because
go
of
through
that.
this.
Yeah,
Well, if everybody else is fine with that, I'm fine with that.
And I'll tell you, I had no trouble for 3 years, nothing, no phone calls, no emails, nothing. Last 3 months, different story.
You could get a usage.
Was that an opportunity person or?
No, there's all sorts of wonderful folks out
So when you say it's all removed, do you mean emails and phone numbers
Yes,
are
I
removed?
just took down,
Yeah.
it was an Adobe's, printout that you pull up and they were all there. So I removed it after last week when.
Yeah, I just think that makes more sense than having it piecemeal, because piecemeal somehow will look funny. You know,
Yeah.
Mr. A is here, but Miss B isn't, Miss C is, but Miss D isn't, you know.
Right.
And somebody will get all the calls. Whoever-
Yeah, whoever's there, why don't you maybe just take them all off and have it all go through review?
Why don't you make a motion that we remove it and have all of our contact information through the office?
Motion so made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Carries. Committee reports. Gary?
I have communications from Jeff yesterday, and he told me he was waiting for the Wards, Jamie Ward and company, to finish their work, and they are finished today. They said they'd be finished on the end of the month. They're finished, except they haven't removed all their equipment. I don't think that's really going to be a problem. Jeff told me as soon as he was done that he would get with the trading post, our contractor, and set up a meeting to set up a schedule. So I expect something to get moving here pretty quick. The weather looks like it's going to be nice. Everything's going to work out just fine, he said, with no confidence at all. And probably in the next week or two, it's a 3 or 4 day job. And then if you'll remember, a couple weeks later, they'll come back and do the gravel on the side of the road. So that should kick off pretty soon. Jeff is really good at this. I'm sure he's all over it, although I haven't talked to him personally. Mike was talking about all of the storms and downed trees, and it's been a mess. It's just been one thing after another. And it is still not all done. We still have cleanup work to be done. Carl is off taking care of other more important things because cleanup work isn't high on the list. But there's not only cleanup, but there's some smaller jobs. We have some trees that still need to be addressed, although they're not urgent. And some other minor work that he'll be getting to soon, I'm sure, after Rhea calls and punches his button again. So that's where we are with the storm cleanup. Not done, work to be done. We also, remember last time we talked about the county had sent us, or I think maybe two months we talked about, the county sent us a shot across the bow about some work down on Lake Terrace. Hope you guys remember that. Anyway, Jeff, I happened to mention it to Jeff, and he inserted himself without our request, and he's just the kind of guy he is. Turns out Chris, the guy from the county who wrote the letter, Jeff knows him personally. So he said, I know Chris, I'll just come in. So I had asked for a meeting, and we met down where the work is. It wasn't anything like I thought it was. I thought it was going to have something to do with the Phragmites at the end. No. It turns out there's intrusion ditches on both sides of that road, right at the end of the asphalt. What's an intrusion ditch? It's nothing but a big hole in the ground filled with gravel. The water would come down and filter into that ditch and then drain out and go down. So it's like a filter, if you would. The Chris from the county said, yeah, this is not a big deal. I said, we're supposed to inspect these every 3 years. We're way, way, way behind. This work was done in 1994. It's never been inspected before. We didn't even know it was there. It's all overgrown with stuff. There are full-grown trees. They're a locust that grows fast. Five or six of them have to come out because they've grown into where that area was. If we'd have known it had to be maintained, we probably could have taken care of it. And then we have to scrape off the surface and repair. There's 2 pipes. I'm getting too technical for you, but anyway, there's lots of work to be done. Because it involved trees, I had Carl come down and look at it, and the guy from the county, Chris, says, "Oh, Carl's doing. We've got this. I've got 3 or 4 places around the county the same kind of work. If you're calling Carl in, he's doing this very same thing on other places." So I talked to Carl, and he's going to take care of the whole thing. So, however, there's not a huge rush. The guy from the county said, "Yeah, we gave you the end of October to get it done, but if you don't do it, we're going to give you another 60 days. And if you don't do it, then we'll give you another 90. So there's a big rush to get it done. So, but Carl's on that. I'm talking a lot about it because it kind of rang my chime. It's like an official letter from the county. You either fix this or we're going to nail you to the cross or something. Wasn't that way at all. And maybe it was because he knows Jeff. I don't know. We have a couple of culverts that need attention. One that needs to be watched. We're going to try to have our new employee, Robert, take a look at it, see if he can fix it. If he can't, then we'll have to do something else. But there's no big rush for it. And the new guy, Robert, what's his last name again?
Oyaski, Oyaski.
Ski. If you're in the military, you know where that comes from. Anybody that has a weird Polish name is always Ski. Mike and I got in the truck with him and rode around for, 2.5, 3 hours looking at everything. We gave him a list of what has to be done, and that list went like this. I knew we were behind. I ride around every week. I don't do the entire community every week, so I do sections. I knew we were behind, but it wasn't until we started making a list it was like, holy crap. And so he's got plenty of work. He started with the office, and it took him several days to clean up around the office, just doing the office. He's not done there. The only thing left to do is kill the poison ivy. But yeah, his work is good. One of the problems we're having though is the big mower's deck is screwed up, and we're hopeful that Robert can fix it. Robert's about 50 years old and handy. Hopefully he can fix it. If he can't, we'll have to get it fixed. But there's lots of other work that require hedge trimmers and line trimmers. He's got 2 weeks worth of work without even using the mower. So there's plenty of work. He seems to be working out okay. I was really pleased with the work he did around the office. So fingers crossed on that. That's it. That's all I have.
It looked like Ward had moved everything out of there.
Yeah, he moved everything up to the top of the road by the lake. He's still got 2 or 3 pieces of equipment and
Small.
yeah, small equipment.
I didn't know if those were his or somebody else.
Yeah, that'll probably be gone by tomorrow. I'm not concerned about it.
But all the big stuff and
All the big
timbers
stuff.
and all that stuff.
They were bringing in stone that each stone weighed 1,200 pounds. It's like a Volkswagen. That's how big some of those stones were. So, and you put a truckload of that stuff, and we didn't want that riding over our new asphalt. So.
All right, Jack, money.
Well, I had a look at the budget for you sent out, and everything looks just as expected. No, everything looks good. Nothing to report, no unusual expenditures or income, so looks great.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll have a chance to get the budget passed.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. Any comments or anything on the budget? Phragmites.
Everybody's emailed back and forth with Mark Smith, and usually they come down in late July. He comes down late July to survey everything. He said because of the COVID, he wasn't doing that. He was just going to show up sometime, probably late September. There's a lot of variables. It can't be a windy day. It can't be too hot. It can't, it can't be raining, obviously. So we will get that done. Hopefully, if I'm around, I'll go around with him and make sure he doesn't have any trouble with Lake Terrace, although it sounds like we've gotten that squared away.
So,
And Mike, if you just will send me the address and what did you say, Mill Creek, where you see some, I'll make sure that.
Mills
Mark-
Creek, I'll
Okay.
get the address and send it to you. We saw it the other day. I just keep forgetting to not write down the address.
The other thing, and I sent it out to Judy and Tony, and I don't know if this, we're the committee, I don't know if I sent it out to everybody. There's a new invasive species over in Northern Virginia called, it's a type of water chestnut, and it's not the kind of Chinese food water chestnut. It looks like a woolly pond pad, and it really spreads quickly over the top surface of a lake, and it just prevents sunlight from getting into the water and disturbs the whole ecosystem. So I asked Mark if he knew if we were having any problems like that in Maryland yet, and he said not that he's aware of. But I did find an article in the Maryland Invasive Species Council webpage about that. So if I didn't send it to everybody, I'll just send it out so you can see what it looks like. It's pretty. They're always, these weeds are always pretty. So. Oh, and the other, I don't think this is environmental exactly, although I'll just say it anyhow. The beach accesses that we have, the one that's on, I guess, surf, is that considered surf? Where Mendo's houses are, it's where Lake Drive swings around, and then there's that little bit of road that goes down to the water. There's a beach access there, but after one of the last storms, those well rings, Min has a fence that extends quite far, and so you have to walk on these well rings, and the sand that has packed the land side of the well rings is gone. So it's a little precarious. And
yeah, I
I
think
don't
that
know
was
what.
mentioned last time too.
Tell me, I think you mentioned it, did you say it?
Well, I forget.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just brief, I mean, it was just sort of a brief remark like that.
I mean, I know we've been having trouble with one beach access took care of itself because it wasn't our property, as it turns out. But the Minbu one is still listed as a beach access, and I think it's a little bit dangerous, I don't know. You have to be really, because my dog wouldn't go on it. He was freaked out.
You said there is a sign on that one?
Yeah, that's a beach access.
Yeah, we walk through every day.
You know, that little hole.
Yeah, it is getting more precarious.
Yeah, Jolly would not go on that,
Yeah.
you know, that was it.
And you have to brush against the tall grass.
Yeah.
I always feel like I'm getting ticks as I'm going on to the beach.
You know, so it's not a friendly beach access anyhow.
But if you take that one away, there's no way to get on.
I think that is on DPPOA property. And I think all it would take is like a bag of gravel and a bag of sand and that whole.
Maybe
Make
so.
that more
Or
stable.
sacred or something, that would shore it up.
Yeah, throw some sacred.
Are we allowed to do that without,
Are we allowed to do that? Sorry.
Sure.
are we allowed to do something like that without a permit?
Well, yeah, because we're
If you're not digging in the ground,
That's
yeah.
where we're repairing an
Okay,
existing,
I'm just asking, okay.
Yeah, you know, because that whole.
We can add that to Robert's
I was
list.
gonna say, I had to do this list.
I have a question about bright lines. I'm assuming, I think I know that we have a company that we work with. Are they on a contract or how does that work? The reason I'm asking is, I know someone who's throwing their hat in the ring. They have a company that does this, and I don't know if our company does it, but they get grant money to cover the fees. So, you know.
Well, we've been using this man for a couple of years now. He's been doing it in the neighborhood.
It's authorized by the,
And he's quite good, and we're pleased with him. I don't know.
and he had to be authorized, we had to be through somebody that was authorized by MDE.
He's a state,
Yeah, he's got a state
certified.
license and all.
He's a state certified provider for this chemical that they use for the fragmites.
Well, I didn't know if you would be open to, when their time's up, to entertain another company or.
Are they authorized, are they certified by MDE and all that?
Yeah, I'll let you, I can send you the information.
Well, why don't you coordinate with Bonnie?
Sure.
Just,
Yeah, just make sure we got it.
I mean, if there's some grant or something that we're missing out on, maybe you could
Sure.
help figure that out.
But we've been well pleased with Mark Smith and the job he's done, so we have to weigh that.
And he's known to the county too. right?
Yes, oh yes, he's a state
He
certified.
used, back in the day when the state did this, he was a state employee doing it. And,
He's state certified.
and then the state stopped doing it. They certified some of their employees. There was one other guy that we tried to reach out to. He never got back to us. And Smith did. And so, you know, they were the only two guys we knew of. And so off we went.
Okay. Well, coordinate, maybe there's some track line we can run on grants and see if there's anything really out there.
Yes. But the idea is that the grant pays for it, pays the provider. Because your guys are working for free, so maybe Mark would go, if Mark would accept that kind of, I mean, we can consider that too.
Regarding the newsletter, I have a little article I wrote about the invasive species porcelainberry. It's a vine that's wreaking havoc on the mid-Atlantic states, and I just gave a brief description and a link. Has it already gone?
There's no, I don't
We
know.
have it in the neighborhood, I've seen it.
What's that?
Oh,
Oh, yeah, I know,
I've
yeah.
seen it.
There might be a little space.
You-
I just gave a very brief history and a link that was, and to a great article written by somebody at Virginia Tech, and I don't know.
Send it to me if I can fit it in.
Well, line spacing on the president's column.
Yeah, I can shrink it.
You can shrink that.
Oh, I know that, yeah.
So-
I had it really shrunk, because I rearranged the whole thing yesterday.
Yeah, oh.
So then I spaced it back out, so it looked nicer. But yeah, I can shrink it again. So
Okay,
send it
then
to
I'll
me,
put it in
if it
this
isn't huge, I can definitely,
Okay.
yeah.
Isn't it funny? It's always the president's colony. Found almost nothing. Because the president never seems to mind.
Well, I won't remove anything except some spacing. So yeah, so send it, and I'll, see if I can work with it.
Okay. Anything else on environmental?
I have one question, and I don't know if it matters at all, but, where the pond flooded and the persimmon tree went over, are we leaving that as is?
It's on-
Here on the lake.
Yes,
It's on Carl's
It's on
list.
this.
okay, because I saw some kids there, and they were like, trying to cut it, and what are you guys doing? The teenagers were up to no good. So I was just, it just seemed, I guess, tempting for these kids. I don't know, they were trying to cut it. And so I was just wondering if we had any plans.
Well, we got, it's on Carl's list to clean that and a couple other dead, obviously dead trees
Yeah,
out of there. We decided not to take out any live stuff.
right. Pull
But
things together.
the gun is big enough to where it would undermine the causeway.
Right, yeah, I don't want to do that. Yeah, I was just curious. I didn't know if we had a plan for that.
Jenny, you sent out a picture the other day of the beach.
Oh,
And I happened to
that's
be down there that same morning, and that's, we had a good crop of subaquatic vegetation. I call it seaweed, it's really subaquatic vegetation of some kind that broke loose from somewhere and came in on the beach. I don't think it's any kind of a.
But it's actually, it's not good that I got thrown up on the beach, but it's good that it was living there.
Oh, right, yeah, it's good for the fish.
That's
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
They're
Yeah, I couldn't believe how much was in the water. It
I
was,
know.
I would not go in the water like that. It
I
was
thought the
disgusting.
color was interesting too.
Yeah, the color was like bright
Bright
green
green.
spinach.
Is
everything.
it
Yeah.
still there?
I haven't been
I
back.
haven't walked over, I'm just curious.
And there was, I think, an article in Reporter maybe a year ago, how everybody was so excited that the subaquatic vegetation was coming back.
Right, right.
So,
It's good.
Every once in a while it gets torn loose and you might get some, because I didn't see it on other beaches.
It was down on Pax, we had it on, because we had to pull up our crab pot, and it was covered in it.
Where at?
We're directly across from the Naval Air Station on Pax.
I
What
You're
about
on Overlook, are you?
On
Are you on Overlook?
Overlook?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you got it there?
Yep.
Okay. So Welcome committee. Oh, no, Peter,
Peter.
sorry.
Two short items. One, at the last meeting, we needed to get back in touch with the Prince Frederick, the EOC, on collecting damage reports. And you asked me to go get more details what and why it was. So I was in contact with it, and I sent an email to the office, and I think to Mike, you about it. And basically, it falls into two categories. They want to know, first of all, as damage occurs, they like to have what they call a situational awareness of what is going on, if we need additional help or something like that. The other is for funding for the purposes of reimbursement for disaster funding relief. So those are the two categories. They like to have a fairly comprehensive report for mitigation or situational awareness, and the other is to collect the information for funding. So that's, I can report back to the board on that. The other thing has to do with, and I don't have an answer to this because it's something we've been dealing with for some time. If you take the telephone numbers off of all the board of directors, then there's always a question, if there is some serious property damage or something that we should know about, some flooding in an emergency or an urgent situation, how do people within an hour or two get in contact with the board? I don't say it's the president or Rhea, but they've always lacked the ability to somehow, on a weekend or Sunday evening or somehow, the contact of our residents to be able to reach somebody in our quote-unquote administration. So that's an issue that sort of is obliquely touched by your current resolution of eliminating various phone calls and contacts. This is a subject as emergency planner that we've been working on, and we've never really found an answer. Now, I know Rhea checks her phone and everything periodically, but if Rhea's on vacation, then we never had a fallback position. And so this is, I'll just throw it out there for discussion if you want to. I can't hear you.
I said it's a good point. I mean, I hadn't thought of that.
When I'm on vacation, I do usually check email and the phone messages, just because I don't want to come back to 25 messages, you know. But I guess you make a good point. If I'm on vacation, I may not check it as regularly. Like Saturday, I checked, and that's how I found out Smeckle had been here to clear off Talbot Drive. I mean, I knew we had rain and storms, so I'm going to check. But if I'm on vacation, it's much less regularly that I would check it.
Well, couldn't you, in case like that, just alert one of us to monitor
Well, yeah, certainly.
the messages while you're gone?
Right. I mean, it would be obvious to him that you should do that, I guess. Oh, Ray's on vacation this week, so maybe designate or ask one of you to do that. Speaking of, I should have said, I meant to say, I'm going to take, if it's all right, Friday and Monday around, Labor Day weekend. Kind of like I did, I think I did that with Memorial Day weekend or the 4th of July or something. But in a case like that, I'm here and I would monitor. I would, check. Especially if there's weather. If there's no weather, bad weather, then probably, and I'm not, for such a short period of time. Well, I'm hearing most
As a start, as you see many businesses, they have posted on the office, in an emergency, call this number.
That's a good
So that's one thing we perhaps could do, is just to post a number. Because we were trying to figure out how to coordinate emergency situations here. And the issue was, how do you get in touch with somebody in the office? You ride down there, walk down there, telephone. And so at least if we have a number, now what that number would be, I don't know. Usually if somebody is under that urgent a situation, it would be they would want to come to somebody for a fairly quick response. And some side with modern technology, maybe there's some way we could do an interconnect with maybe I hate to call it as we do in the military, a duty officer, but you know, there is, I think that we're vulnerable in that we really don't have a backup system for somebody in the community to, except for 911, that's their only solution, is really to call 911. And we've had people do that, and then the fire department calls us and say, you have a problem. And that was kind of an interesting way to do it. It went to Rhea, and then Rhea let me know. Anyway, I think we can post a number, but maybe with some a relay, you know, medical services have that system. I don't know what the community expects of us, but I've had this question come up before, and if you're going to take your numbers off, this is what sort of gave you a little red flag.
Might give it something.
Yeah, one of the things we could look into is Comcast. We have Comcast service, right?
Right.
Comcast offers a call forwarding feature. So you could use the second number. We have two numbers. You only call the main number and then it overflows. But you could use the second number and forward it to someone, and you could have a duty roster or something. I don't know. But forwarding that number to whoever has agreed to be on call for that week/year, month, whatever you decide, is a way you could do that. There are also, if you really want to get serious about it, there's equipment that could be hooked up that would convert the call to a text. And in fact, Comcast offers that now that I think about it. If you get a voicemail, you can have it text on your phone.
You know, you can actually log into the account, get either voice or text.
Yep.
Any kind of message.
Yeah, every time I get a voicemail, I get a text on it, and you can do the same thing with this, and you can decide where that text goes to. So there's a couple of options of ways that, if we think that maybe it needs more discussion, I don't know, but there are technically ways to do it.
I'm just curious, like, what kind of emergencies would call the office? I mean, I think if it's a really, like, if someone's having
Road washed out?
heart issues or something, they call 911, so I'm just.
Tree
I don't know
down,
how much-
tree down,
Roadblock, tree down.
All right, let's assume I'm the duty officer. I get this phone call, trees down. My answer is, hey, that's cool, okay, good. Who do I call?
Call here.
Yeah. Here's the thing, exactly, I was thinking the same thing. Why do you have to have a duty officer? Well, some public services will say, I need approval to go onto private property or something like this, or to the DPPOA. And only board members and the president can give authority, that kind of authority.
We can't get approval to go on private property.
Well,
Well,
DPP.
if it's community property, then that's
If we don't-
another issue. In other words, somebody has to be able to speak for the community if that kind of situation arises. And as a committee member, I don't have it, and Gary doesn't have it anymore, but you would assume, like a duty officer, that then you have the authority of the president to speak for the community at large.
So here's another question. Suppose there's a tree down and somebody on the other side of that tree needs rescue. We certainly would have an obligation to do something.
Call the fire department.
Well, you just said they call us.
Yeah, well, they should call the fire department. If they need an ambulance and they're calling me, they need psychiatric.
But something like that would be that's an
That's
idea.
crazy.
EMT
And
is
at that point,
Yes,
someone
that's
would
great.
respond to remove the tree so the rescue could get in.
Fire department has removed trees without our permission,
They don't need anybody's permission.
always.
Well, yeah.
That's how I got the call from Smecco the other day. They had it removed, but they weren't gonna do the cleanup, the debris on it. But they didn't call and ask, can we remove this tree?
You know,
They just took it off.
I don't know if any of us would really know if something was private property or not. Remember when Megan and Bruce's tree fell, I was calling to try to figure if where it was. It took some while to figure
And,
that out.
and with regard to forwarding a phone, I have my cell phone, of course, which I'm not going to volunteer that to the community. But I have a second cell phone for other purposes. It's a burner phone, that's what my son-in-law calls it.
Does the sheriff know?
This is when you're dealing? Yeah.
Anyway, I would be willing to have calls forwarded to that. But the thing of it is, I don't carry that with me at all times. I guess I could,
Well, I think,
you know,
I think,
The text is-
look into
the text thing, what?
look at the text thing and forwarding.
Uh-huh,
And let's come up with a couple ideas on how to do that.
okay.
I mean, like you said, you're not gonna carry that burner phone around with you, so that doesn't, to me, that doesn't seem like a practical.
Okay.
It's either we assign, if you're not gonna be here, we assign somebody to look at the text or to have the stuff forwarded to them, and we act on it then,
Right.
all the fire.
So you're saying that I can actually have a message that's
Speed it
left
up.
on the phone forwarded to my phone as a text message?
Yep.
Is that what can be done?
Yeah, you can set it up with Comcast if you get a voice message, it'll text you with the text of a transcript of the,
So nobody ever sees my cell phone number that way?
correct.
Watch it.
I have had that feature on my phone, and there are a lot of
Sometimes it's
mistakes
gobbledygook.
in the translation.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's
You have a
gobbledygook, yes.
general idea.
But a lot of times it's good
But
stuff
the
too.
names are wrong, and the numbers are wrong, so if you're looking for a house number or something, it can all be jumbled up.
Yeah,
I was
I
surprised
have
how
it
many mistakes.
But you can go into Xfinity, Comcast, and you can, let's say you get alerted. You can go in and look at it, which is what you're saying. It doesn't always do a good voice translation, voice to text.
Yeah, my phone.
But then you can also listen to it.
Okay, well then that's good, because that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
All right, I'll check into it. I assume there's a cost
No,
to Comcast, no?
well, there's not on a private line, I don't know about business.
If we have,
Probably.
we have a regular business voice account,
We do.
okay, it should be accessible on that. If it's not a more expensive option.
Okay.
We just have standard voice at the club, and it's on there.
Okay.
Now, the forwarding part, I don't know. That may be an extra option.
Mhm.
But the actual recording and being able to remotely access the voicemail,
Okay.
so we'd have to do is find out if there's a forwarding feature or a notification feature or something
Okay.
that cues it.
So I'm a realtor, and as such, my phone is with me 24 hours a day. Obviously, I turn it off. at
Do
night.
the opposite.
You're a volunteer.
As a last resort, if you can't work anything else out, I'll be willing to let the phone be forwarded to my number, because it's with me all the time. I have to have it just for business purposes. So, it's an option. If you all are stuck and can't go any further.
Well, if I'm out of town for a week or,
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, let's look at this and then decide whether we need an additional backup or whether we can make something like that.
Have we cleared up exactly what we would do if we get something like that? Then who do we call? Do we call 911 or, you know, who is the person that we contacted?
Mike, if I may.
Go ahead.
I've never picked up a message that was an emergency. Never. Nobody ever calls the office and, it's always just, oh, there's a tree down. Well, you call the roads person, or you maybe call Mike if Gary weren't around. You call the president. That's,
So how does the fire
Like I
department
call
find that? Do we call them or?
I think the people on the street call them. The people that live on that street often call the fire department.
Yeah,
I've
oh
never
yeah,
called
all
them.
happens all the time.
Have you called them? I've
I've never had to, no, because I call Carl.
Like the guy on Lesson, Steve Lawson, he called the other day, left a message, I returned the call. By the time you got there, the fire department was already there.
Yep.
Cleaning it off the street. So somebody else called the fire department, you know.
This is, you know, you probably can't see that from here, but I have this list that I keep with me in my folder, and the folder is always handy, my portfolio. And it's a list of numbers of people to call. And Smedco, Comcast, Carl, RIA, the Sheriff's Department, and the emergency people. It's just, you know, as the roads guy and as past president, when I was president, that's when I put this together, you needed to know all this stuff. So it could be easily conveyed. Here it is right here. I mean, it's not hard to convey to somebody else who wants to be in that seat.
Okay, well, it sounds like it's working, okay? I mean, the normal process, people call the right people. If it's something like this, like Smecco, they'll know because they know when the power line went down. So they're gonna respond to that.
Yeah, they responded because that tree was on the power.
Or, you know, when a neighbor will call and say, I've got a tree laying down on the line and they're arcing and the transformer blowed up. And
Right.
Smecco is good about that. I just wasn't sure about the fire department, how they get on. It sounds like
Some of the
we're
residents call.
like fixing it, it's not working. We just need to, but it's a good point. I mean, we need to, once we figure out how we're gonna notify or get notified, then we need to have a list like Gary has, or, you know, here's who you call. So I'll put that in.
So for clarification, going back to what Peter was talking about, and what you said, Bria, that no one's ever called an emergency. I'm assuming what Peter's talking about is the fact that people need to report trees down or damage to their property due to a storm. So maybe we kind of got outside the box in this discussion, because if people have an emergency, they're going to call 911.
Right.
They're not going to call the office either.
Yeah, I mean, so they're gonna report trees down on the property or some other destruction. If it's not an emergency, they wouldn't need to contact us outside of business hours.
Right.
Right.
Right. It's always, I've been here 16 years, it's always worked fine. I mean, there's never been a time that I know that a message didn't get picked up and, you know, dire results as a result, you know, because of maybe I picked up an hour later than I should have or something. You know, there were never any dire consequences that anybody made me aware of.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's common knowledge that there's really a medical or something like that to call 911.
Right.
I think people generally are familiar with that process.
Peter, did you have a specific kind of event that you had in mind that you were concerned about?
Well, yeah, there are a couple things in mind that, first of all, if they call 911 and we have a serious event here, how does the 911 get in touch with us to tell us
But why
that
should,
we've got an issue?
for 911 calls, they normally wouldn't get in touch with us. They're going to respond, either law enforcement, medical, fire.
And I'm
They don't get called.
I'm thinking in more extreme cases. An ambulance and a fire in a house is not an emergency for our association. But if we do have a more serious event, such as the fire coming through the forest, or a mass casualty situation where we'd like to get in touch with the neighbors and let them know what's going on. Those are the kinds of situations where, in the community training that we got involved with, that we'd have to work together with the EMT people and the fire and rescue, and supplement and assist them in doing damage assessment and helping them out. I mean, that's the resources that we might have to help out, and that we could do. That's one of the main purposes. As I said, the authority is another issue. What I did visualize is sometimes when we have electricity down, Carl can't come in until the electricity is fixed or vice versa. The electricity can't get in until we clear some of the, now the fire department has been very good about that on our private roads, or our public-private roads, if you want to call them that. But they are being constricted for tax purposes of how much they can do with that in the future. I mean, we got the feedback when we asked them, you know, if they can do this or that. And they are, as long as there is multiple access, they're okay. But if there is no access, then, I mean, if there's multiple access, they don't have to come. If there is no access, then they come and open up our roads for emergency purposes, vice versa. So those are some of the situations. The nightmare to me would be if one of these airplanes crashed into our community and coming off the airbase. That's my worst nightmare, to tell you the truth. If it came in here and took out several houses and things. Now, we would probably find out about that. The other thing is, I'm just thinking of people who are in serious distress and they can't get through on their telephone. How do they contact someone? And the cell phone connection is, you know, usually pretty good. But as we found out in previous disasters such as Katrina, communication in New York, the communication went out completely. So even the mayor of New Orleans couldn't reach anybody because her phones were down, the battery went down. We learned from these experiences. I look at it from, you know, more of a what-if situation. And instead of, you know, if somebody breaks their leg and falls down the driveway or something. I look at it more like a, you know, what if this happens? Can we have a response?
I have a question for you, Peter. In your capacity as the emergency coordinator for the community, they usually call you, the outside authorities call you if there was an evacuation or something like that, a storm or something like that. They would call you, is that the way it works now?
Yes.
So rather than us calling them, they would call you?
That's why we sort of have a high-profile emergency service center here in the office. The purpose of that is to always make sure that EOC knows we have emergency capabilities down here and that we will stay in touch with them and they know who we are. Twice a year I go up there, I greet and shake hands and discuss our various common issues. And then for primarily communication purposes. But previously we had community training to react to mass casualties. For instance, one of them was the tour boat caught on fire on the beach down here, and it put into our beach. And so we had to react to that. And we had airplanes, civil air patrol flying around, we coordinated civil air patrol, sort of a mass casualty situation where 911 may not be available. I mean, they're called off to something else. So those are the situations where I like to see the communication links as steady and as sure as can be, even if the cell phones go out and what if situation. You know, we learn from past problems, and I try to apply them here.
Okay, well,
That's a long story.
but that's a two-way communication process, though, right? So if they were aware of something down here that they needed our involvement or support, they're going to contact the emergency pyramid alert process. Or if you're aware of something, you would contact them.
Well, they would call me, and then I would get in touch with the list of telephone numbers, whatever the situation is.
So we have a process for that. And we have some of the other what-if scenarios you're talking about. I think there's other higher-level agencies that are involved in that process. If an airplane comes down, the controllers at PAX or St. Mary's are going to know it. If a gas boat blows up out there, there's all kinds of people are going to know that. They're not going to depend on us. They're not going to call us, and they're not going to depend on us for that. We may, at some later point, get involved, from a community protection standpoint.
The Emergency Operations Center would get in touch with me and let me know, and they would want feedback from
Yeah, I
us.
know, yeah, but what we're addressing here is, your original question, which was, how do we get notified if it's on the weekend and Rita's at home? And so we're addressing that process.
Okay, I
To see how
understand.
we, because I think there's other processes already in place through the Emergency Operations Center and through our local civil defense and other processes that are in place. There's a whole process with the nuclear plant, there's a whole process with the gas plant, on community.
But I thought the question was, would they get in touch with me? And the answer is yes, probably, and the fire department would call me. What's your question?
But I just think we're starting to get away from the original.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it's all good, but I think all I'm saying is I think there's a number of processes already in place for these what-if, large-scale type scenarios. What we're worried about is how does somebody respond if a tree goes down in front of their house?
I agree. Yeah.
And you're saying that maybe they wouldn't need to contact us because there's mechanisms for taking care of that.
Well, it sounds like it's been working pretty well.
Right, yeah, that's
That
right.
either the power company or the fire department or, appropriate first responders are there. And then we get involved in the aftermath, clean up, that type of thing.
And that being said, we've never had a real serious disaster here in the community.
Right.
We've never in the last 15, 20 years that I know of.
Plus, going back to my
Yeah.
starting comments was thank you, Peter, thank you, Gary. And I've even drug my butt out a couple times on the roads and driven around. So we have people looking out for each other, and that's helped us.
Yeah.
They did have a plane go down in Patuxent. Were you around when that happened?
What was that?
The Oscar?
One of my sister's neighbors was telling me when she first moved in on Overlook, she was looking out and a plane went down in the water, and she called and reported it, and they gave her all kinds of grief. They thought she was somehow involved. She told me it was crazy, but yeah, this happened. The plane did go down.
An Osprey went down, a number of years
It
ago.
could happen, but like I say, there's all kinds of other systems that are monitoring these kind of things. So,
Yeah.
okay. Welcome.
Welcome, committee. Okay. The letter did go out to Carolyn Hart, thanking her for her, above and beyond contributions. And also, I've distributed 2 buckets. There's 2 on hand, whoever is around, and we can always use more wine. You might want to really.
Always more wine.
Always need more wine for this.
Never enough.
And that's it. That's all. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for all you guys do on that.
Well, they do most of it. I just print out coupons and pick up brochures.
Well, thanks for all the doobies that do the work.
There you go.
Okay. Planning committee. Okay, the focus of the planning committee is, at least since I've been involved, has been on the beach. Beach erosion, what can we do about it? And recall that last year, I guess it was, we met with the engineering firm out of Virginia that's done a lot of the work around Pax River, Potomac, up and down the areas here, Jefferson Park, that have put in systems to try to help control beach erosion. So we had them do a kind of a preliminary look, and they gave us a proposal which basically said we could do this in a couple phases. The first phase they suggested was basically a study that would propose some options and costs and look at the whole situation and give us give us a plan on proposed costs. To do that, it would cost, they proposed $10,000. We discussed that before. And we were going to bring that up to the membership and see if they would approve a $10,000 expenditure and try to look at more of a long-term solution to the beach. Well, then COVID hit and we never got to have a meeting, so we haven't brought that up to the membership. I think we pretty much determined we are going to have a meeting on the 29th of September. We looked at the club is under the same guidelines as the rest of the state. It's 50% capacity. It's not 50 people, although in a coincidence it turns out it probably is 50 people because their capacity is 100. It's based on their legal capacity. So I can't remember a time since I've been involved with that 50 people at the beach.
You never know.
It's something controversial out there.
Yeah, it's controversial enough, but in this case, I doubt it, and especially with the COVID, I doubt that we're going to get, we'll be lucky to get a quorum, I think. Which is kind of a second point, we need to really work the proxy or absentee ballots.
So that raises a question that Jack brought up the other night. The ones that were collected, I've got them, I'm quite sure. Are they still valid? I meant to look. There's a date on that ballot, so I'm guessing it's no longer valid.
Probably not.
The date of the meeting would be on that ballot. So probably we need to start over. Okay.
We mentioned it in the newsletter, and we need to put some notice out to the community to, if they can't come to the meeting, please come and get an absentee ballot so we
Right.
can get the budget passed. But if we do have a meeting, I want to discuss this proposal and discuss the problem we have.
I'm sorry,
Go
before you,
ahead.
just one real quick point. I talked with Mary Ann the other day, and they're paying additional money to have the place clean according to whatever COVID requirements might be. It's $125, I think she said. So we might have to be prepared to pay that.
Yeah, if they're doing that cleaning specifically for us. of
Yes.
course.
Okay, just to let everybody know that that might be a cost for them.
Yeah, the agreement says we'll be responsible for any expense
Okay. So yes, so I'm just saying, it's, I think
incurred on
she
our
said
behalf, so.
$125. Usually they pay $50 for somebody to come in and clean it, something like that. It's $125. So, I just wanted to get that out there. I'm sorry?
What was the date of the membership?
29th of September, it's a Tuesday, 7 o'clock. Remember we switched last year from Wednesday to Tuesday?
Tuesday on
Because
purpose.
Wednesday was a bad, yeah.
And how soon they forget, especially when we're over 40.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right. So I just want to bring you up to date a little bit on what's been going on at the beach. Remember that we, back in July, had 2 big dump truck fulls loads of sand brought into the beach and spread. And it really covered up most of the broken asphalt. There was one little area at the beginning of the beach that's got a big chunk of drop off there. Covered it initially, but then it didn't take long before that kind of washed out. The rest of the beach was holding pretty good. Even through Isaias, it came through in good shape. We had very little extra erosion of that sand that we brought in. Then comes a little nor'easter on the 16th, and I go down there the next day and it's gone. I mean, it was just gone. All the asphalt was exposed and more. It was really a mess and very disappointing. However, going back there the last few days, we've actually recovered a fair amount of sand. Not total, but at least some of it's come back and we've covered up some of the asphalt. So it could be, it's maybe useful, but I don't think it's sufficient to preserve the beach. So I go back and forth, but I'm thinking it's worth having this Scott Hardaway, this engineering firm, actually do a dedicated look at the options that we have to try to preserve that beach. It's a community asset. It's not going to be cheap, depending on what they propose. I think, and if we do it, if we turn them on to do it, there's a few things that I want to specify that they do. I want them to ensure that they're considering the adjoining properties. So whatever they propose, they're looking at the impact on the adjoining properties. So if it involves a club or property next to us upstream, we're looking at that. I want to ensure that some of these studies have a tendency to go one way or the other. And when I say that, I mean they'll look at nothing but current as being the transport mechanism for sand. Well, that's not completely true. Turns out the wave action is also an important factor, maybe the most important factor. So they have to, when they do this study, they have to look at the whole environment and make sure we're considering the predominant wave action, the predominant current action, and come up with a solution that works. One of our past members, who I respect a lot, who's done a lot of coastal study, thinks that nothing we can do will help. Well, I differ with him because I see examples at the base. I see examples at Jefferson Patterson Park. I see examples in the Potomac where these breakwaters and things have allowed beach to either grow or at least be sustained. So I think we need to look at it. But I guess my retort to him was, if we do nothing, we're losing. So we have to decide. And I think the study is a good beginning point. Now, that said, I also then, I guess it's almost 2 weeks ago, get a call one morning, and we had got a call from our friends Ward Marine Construction. We said, well, I'm meeting down here with Rick Ettinger, our neighbor, community beach neighbor just to the north, adjoining property. And we're meeting with him to decide how to put a jetty in. Oh, okay. We think you ought to come and be part of the meeting. So I did. I went down. And of course they're pitching, well, we're going to he wants to put a jetty basically at the property line, going straight out, perpendicular to the shoreline out into the bay. Well, there's evidence that if you do that, there may be some impact, probably be some impact on our beach. Okay, so again, that's part of this whole process of looking at the whole thing, looking at the whole problem. Okay. But we're liable to get faced with, we're going to probably go in for a permit. And they'll come, hopefully, if they do, the county and or state will come to us for approval. I mean, you're looking at questioning.
Well, I agree entirely with your comments about what we want that study to cover. And if we do decide to go with the study, our letter to them should specify minimum requirements of what we want to look at. The neighbor putting in a jetty, he's not going to get any beach.
Well,
from what I understand, because he has already put in that riprap, he's not going to get beach. Beach is not going to come back for him.
Well,
so why is he putting in a
I
jetty?
don't know, because up through 2011, I had imagery to 2011, and then I had imagery starting in 2013. Up to 2011, he had beach covering at least half of his water line, half of his shoreline.
Did he have the riprap then?
Yeah, riprap's been there for years. There was some replenishment.
Refreshed it.
But the riprap's been there for years and years.
That flies in the face of what I'm constantly being told, that, once you put in riprap, if the water comes up to it, you're not going to have beach again.
Well,
It's speeds up the process of the.
Yeah, that's
It
what.
changes what happens there, and it depends on the slope of the riprap and a whole bunch of different features that affect how waves transport the sand.
You know, the other thing, what you just dawned on me, we really need that study for no other reason to tell us what the hell would be the effect of just putting that jetty out there.
Right. Yeah, that's my thought, is that we need to have a more holistic study that allows us to determine what happens if somebody else does something, and what happens if we do something.
Yeah, because, we sure as hell wouldn't want to say, oh, yeah, we think it's great for you to put the jetty in. And then we find out afterwards, somebody goes, oh man, you never should have done that, it's going to destroy your beach.
Right.
Right.
And I talked to him privately afterward. I didn't want to get into discussion with the board, because they obviously have their own
Oh,
agenda.
the board's got a profit motive.
Right. Now, in defense of the board, they did make one suggestion that might be worth, they said, well, maybe, we could go in for kind of a joint permit. And if we got you guys a permit, you wouldn't have to use it right away, but you'd have it, in the event that we decided to do something.
What would be the idea that
But
you could do this thing meanwhile, or would it have to wait till everybody agreed on the solution?
The what?
Would the neighbor be able to go forward with what he wants to do, or would he have to wait until we all?
I don't know. We should get notified.
But if we have a joint permit, that means he has to wait until we have a
Right.
general solution.
Yeah, does the joint permit mean he can go ahead before we have any kind of study? And we
Well,
can-
that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
The joint permit sounds nice, but it sounds like it's a double-edged sword,
yeah.
and maybe pointed right at us.
And of course, Ward's suggestion, well, why don't you guys can go ahead and put a jetty in too, and and if you don't like it, then we'll come back and we'll move rocks, because you already got the rocks there.
That's why we need a study, I think.
I
We have to
don't want to put in a jetty if it's going to destroy the club's beach.
Yeah.
I mean, we are then,
No, I know.
they are us.
I know.
They don't,
So,
you don't want to do that.
so basically, what I'm asking is, you guys can make a motion or just nod your head or whatever, that we go ahead and present this idea of a study to the membership and ask for $10,000 to do the study, to try to look at long-term solutions for the beach.
It's in the budget.
I thought we had
It's in the
agreed to that.
proposed budget.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, so that's why I confused
I
Mark
couldn't-
reiterating this.
And I looked at what you sent out, I wasn't sure if it was in there or not. It wasn't a specific line item, it was in the,
I thought we as a board had agreed that.
Well, we did, but I didn't.
I have to look at that again, but I'll double check it.
I mean, in the way things are with forums and such, I don't know if we had to put it towards a general membership, you may never get it.
That's another very realistic question. We've got a situation where we don't know if we're going to get a quorum, when we're going to get a quorum, how long can we stretch this question out? And at what point do we say, okay, can we make a decision without going to the general membership?
Well, I mean, Ray's done a good point. If we put it in the budget, and if it's specifically called out, and we get,
I thought we,
Well, if it's in the budget, it doesn't have to be spent, obviously.
right,
But if it's in the budget, the
if
budget.
they approve the budget,
then we have tacit approval to do it.
right.
and the budget will get approved if there's no quorum, right?
No, we have
No,
to,
we have to,
3
we have to
months.
have a quorum of votes to pass it.
We've never
It'd
had
be
a meeting
another 3
where there
months.
wasn't a quorum so that we could vote that the next meeting would be a quorum, you know what I mean? That vote
I thought
was-
you automatically didn't have to worry about a quorum if you had a budget, if you had a meeting and there wasn't a quorum in the next meeting automatically. I thought that was.
Yeah,
But we haven't had a meeting yet to be able to have that vote. It's not automatic.
Oh,
We have to take that.
But I guess we didn't do anything in June, did we?
Frankly,
March
it
meetings.
would be better for all of us, for the community, for the general membership, if we could have it presented to the general membership and have it done.
Right,
But considering the circumstances, how long would we wait?
I know.
no, I know.
Well, the other thing too, I mean, is it Edinger, the name of the neighbor, or whatever his name is, the neighbor to the north. Meanwhile, he can go ahead and go for his permit and start his project unless we.
Don't they have to ask us for sign off or something on that? Because we're the neighbor.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
They do,
So we just don't sign off.
Otherwise,
And we tell them we're pending a study,
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah, okay. That's what I should, you can't go ahead and do something.
But
I also just feel that
Yeah.
there's a lot of dynamics going on, there's a lot of erosion happening.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is
on the website.
How long,
Yeah, how long should we wait?
You know, if we don't do something soon, it might be.
And then the bridge.
And at least if we have to study,
So we know what the use is. Yeah, I mean,
So it's not gonna be
Even
specific,
if the study is
but
going to
just.
just solution, we'll also have to wait to.
And, you know, you get to the point, I remember working saying, you have to do something.
Then we have no use of it.
Do something.
Right.
And the property is valued at $100,000.
It's actually that, that's all right. I put this one on budget.
No, we wouldn't present it.
Otherwise, how am I gonna function?
Right.
So it's actually in that report,
We're losing
the budget to actual,
Losing what?
We're losing.
you know, budget to actual, you know.
Yeah.
In this,
And you know, the whole thing is okay, if we should be, I don't know, when we still lose, at least we try.
I know, it'll be like the last one.
All right, well, we just don't sign off on
Well,
that.
I don't, well, if they need our sign off to go ahead with their jetty, we just don't sign off. And we tell them we're not being bad guys, we're waiting for a study.
Jeff.
But,
They can appeal. I mean, we don't have a veto power.
yes,
We
the
did.
whole thing is right.
Certainly did.
We have
Just
to,
keep putting it on.
we have to move ahead with the study. and our-
We're getting.
This is a continuation of last year's budget.
Yes,
This is gonna be our budget for a long time. That's
Yeah,
it.
Okay, well, so are we in agreement then that we will go ahead and bring this to the general membership? And
But how do we want to do it? We want to just present it as a budget, and they approve the budget, and then we assume that we now have permission to do it?
well, no, I would want to explain what it is.
Okay, I have no problem with that, as long as, you know, we all know what we're going to do.
Okay.
It's not, I think it's fine.
And if it's not approved, then we still have the problem of the original.
Well,
piece.
right, I mean, if we don't get a quorum, if we don't get an approval,
See, this is the one.
Yeah, but then, you know, somebody's got to also explain to the general membership that if we do nothing, our neighbor asks for the permit, we don't sign off, that's not, as Peter pointed out, that's not really veto power. He appeals, whoever he appeals to says, yeah, you can do the jetty, and then we're holding the bag.
right.
And the other thing too is I think that membership needs to understand, I think Jeff, once you said that property is valued at $90,000. So that's another part of this picture. We can't jeopardize our asset.
The beach is valued at $91,000, the office is only valued at $81,000. I mean, the beach is worth more than the office.
It's not showing on the report because it's a brand new line item and I didn't click it off in, you know, redo my report to show that. But it's in there, it's in the budget, the one that's online, the web website.
It'd be useful if we could show that in
Yes.
when it's in the newsletter.
And, you know, but we're now getting the outside pressure.
Okay,
Yes. Which will affect what we can do.
I can't.
We need to show that line.
Just that one line item? Oh, I can do that, just that one line item. Yeah, I can do that. All right.
So if this is vetoed, we have to enforce, we have to have a way to rectify this situation.
Well,
When you say this is this refers to the study approval? Or are you talking about the
Well, they
neighbor?
did a study, that's what I'm
There's-
saying.
Yeah.
Like Tony said, he could appeal. You could, you know, just go back and forth on that kind of process.
And we're not taking money away from the roads or anything else. I mean,
No,
it's already in the budget. and
No, but
whatever
yeah.
things.
It's in there.
Yeah.
So, and the community has to understand that not only that the value of the beach as we understand it, but there's an asset value as well, not just the nice material on
The
here.
point there is, it's not a question of whether we're spending anything or not. this is gonna cost us money no matter what.
That's
It's
right.
either gonna cost us beach
Mhm.
value, which will go away, or
Yeah.
an actual expenditure.
So
Either one.
let's have a study to
It's
figure out
costing us money.
some smart strategies.
That's, you know, well, I think that's the argument for, to the gentleman.
Right, right.
At least we need the study so we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, right.
Maybe easily decide to not do anything and eat the cost of the beach.
That's right, yeah, look, if the study comes in one way and it says, yeah, if you do this, it's gonna, you know, you're gonna spend $250,000 and it's gonna destroy the beach, the club beach, and it's gonna do this and that, and you sort of go, well, wait a minute, we can't do that, so, okay, but at least we know that.
A long time ago, when I mentioned this to the neighbors across from me, when I said about the 10,000, I said, but the beach, the property is worth 90,000, and you know, and the money is already in the budget, hasn't been approved necessarily. But so I think if you present it in the right way, the membership will understand. If you just say it, the number, then they go.
We'll make talking points before the meeting.
Yeah,
I mean,
yes,
it's a good way to
yeah.
do it, just organized way to do it.
And if they're faced with the possibility of losing the beach, there will be some
Oh.
pretty frustrated people.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's everybody's land values too, everybody
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's, as we're losing access to beach in other places,
Yes.
in the property, that becomes even more important.
Mhm.
It's one of the few places where you really do have ADA access to the beach. So it's just, if we don't do something, I think we're going to eventually lose it, or it's going to be a mess.
And if the decision, if the ultimate decision is to do nothing, we have to get to it through a logical process, not just stumble into it because we didn't do it.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, we'll proceed with that. Okay, and actually, the next bullet was supposed to have been talk about this agreement with Mary Ann, she's not here, so I'm not going to do that again. I was hoping she would have been here to hear the discussion about the beach. I may try to call her and see if there's any chance that they would help or participate in the study, i.e. help fund it. But I don't know if they have any money or not,
But
I would-
their beach is, their beach is worth something too. So
Oh, yeah.
they have,
I think their beach is the whole raison d'etre for the club.
right, so
Yeah.
if they have to be willing to do what they have to do to preserve it too.
Well, I'm gonna at least try to get a hold of her and broach the subject and see where they're at. And participate. Okay, I guess we already jumped the gun on the new business and more contact, right?
Yeah.
On new
I was gonna
business.
nudge it, but I thought, well,
Can you fire me?
no.
And you can't quit either. No, I guess you can quit.
I won't even tell you the words he said for you, Tony.
I think, let me tell you, they are all graciously accepted and well-deserved.
Right.
I have a question on, I don't know if it's new business or not, but are we gonna have a fall cleanup or not? I know.
Oh, I hadn't considered it,
Well,
frankly. I guess we could.
well, you know, we're gonna have a general membership meeting, or we're gonna have, I don't know.
Well, what do
And
you
if
think?
we had one, when would we have it?
Some given Saturday in September or probably October maybe at this point. If appeal will deliver. Now, in the springtime when we canceled, he said, I don't even think they'll allow me to deliver one anyway. Because it was a tentative thing. Do we cancel, don't we
Yeah,
cancel?
yeah.
And he said, I don't even think they'll let me deliver one, he being the man at Appeal Landfill. I
Yeah.
mean, I can contact Appeal and see.
No, I'm just curious, I mean, you know.
Well, why don't you find out if
Yeah.
it's accessible? I think October would be the meeting.
You know, it's just one of those semi-annual events that, okay, we didn't have it in the spring, but we're gonna have it in the
Right.
fall.
And with it being outside,
Yeah,
completely
or we just
honest.
cancel it until next spring. I'm not pushing for or against, just that.
Right, right.
No, it's a good point. And like I say, being outside, I can see that it's an issue.
Unless people are, I know in the past, you and Bonnie have helped, and, you know, bring things and
Right.
put it in the dumpster. So you might have to,
Well, usually
Stay
things you're
away.
helping anybody with, they're kind of 6
Yeah.
feet apart, anybody's helping them to
Yeah.
lift it, it's not like a,
we're not face to face.
Yeah, we have to police it a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think we can do
Mask
that.
and
I was thinking about versus
Just
here.
for 5
Yeah.
minutes, it's
Mask
just
and
for
glove and
5 minutes.
sunglasses, easy.
Membership meeting. I don't
That's
know.
it.
Or are we gonna make masks mandatory at the
Yeah.
meeting? So
Yes.
Mike had suggested I buy a box of 50 or so off of Amazon,
Oh, yeah.
the cotton.
Oh, you're gonna buy something.
Just a
So we
certain-
have them for anybody that doesn't bring that.
That's
Those little blue ones that are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That-
The little blue ones that are now showing up everywhere in the water.
I know, I'm sure, I've seen them too.
Forget plastic bags, they're not a problem, it's face masks.
Yeah,
And gloves.
And go, I've seen them too. Smell it.
okay. So,
That's it, I think.
we've got the membership meeting scheduled for 29th September, 7 o'clock. Unless something else happens, we're going to go ahead with that. If we can pull it off safely. And the next board meeting, I have October 6th is the first Tuesday. That work for everybody? Back to 11 o'clock?
Sounds good.
11 o'clock?
If some of the restrictions are let go and we can do it back at the office, we'll do that. As long as Jack will put up with us.
So is it 11, is it October 6th with time open or 11?
No, let's do 11. The only reason this was the one is I had a doctor appointment already arranged this morning. I didn't want to try to change it.
People start going back to work, or is anybody in this room work?
Listen.
Listen,
I was delivering meals on wheels.
You're retired, but just kill me.
Yeah. That's like day on Tuesday, I deliver meals on wheels, so.
What time, 11?
Well, like, starting at 9 in the morning, but it's not every week, it's like, but it just happens to sometimes fall on the same. And I can switch the week.
Can I assume that everybody's Saturday in October is open as far as a cleanup day, if anybody can help? And so on?
Sure.
No big plans going up?
well,
There'll be some Saturday.
It'll be a Saturday.
I'm going to be out of town from the 10th to the 20th or something like that. But I don't have to.
I unfortunately have no place better to go.
I'm with you. Not the service. No 17.
Well, then I have no place else.
We want to go to Louisiana. They just cleaned up all this.
Michelle.
Oh, of course.
It's all supposed to be sitting in Spain.
Oh, friends of ours.
Poor child.
People,
Oh, that's
they're getting
Yeah. And then we.
We're going to Chicago for a grandson's reception.
With that, and of course, that.
Okay, anything else? Any closing remarks or